Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Many days, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. We go into overdrive. Back Sundays, 4 to 6 p.m. I am Alex Jones, your host. Many days this happens, but I can't think of a time in recent 6 months or so that I have been this upset at my core. And also not feeling even worthy to bring you this information. It's so big, it's so powerful, it's so real that to say that the communist Chinese now own the United States isn't even the tip of the iceberg. It is worse than that. It is all publicly on record that it's been planned. But China is only one layer of this. And so I want to go through what's happening currently and the ways that Hu Jintao has been publicly humiliating the United States at the pre-agreement with this criminal government and why this is being done. It's very nuanced. But to sum it up, on record, Mao Zedong was put into power by the CIA and British intelligence. That's been released. That's even on the History Channel. It's admitted. They put him in power. The Russians wanted to nuke in the late 60s. That's now been declassified. China, they were worried about them. They could do the prospectus and the actuary on their rising power. They wanted to have a joint nuke on China. The United States said no. Russia was only confirming for itself that a secret behind-the-scenes deal had indeed been made. And there were cross deals with Russia as well. These are power groups working with each other but also fighting with each other. But they believe in the power of the state. They believe in the power of the collectivist. They believe in transhumanist, social Darwinistic eugenics. And they've all signed on to the United Nations, and they're attempting to use it as a global vehicle where all of them tie into it, attempting to expand their geopolitical imperiums. And the corporations that profit from this sit above China, above the U.S., above Russia, and have vastly more wealth than the so-called debt. The United States is reportedly a little over $1 trillion in debt to the Chinese. $28 trillion in just the first year and a half of the banker bailout was paid to undisclosed offshore banks. A lot of it China, a lot of it EU, a lot of it private banks, brokerage firms, governmental central banks. When I talk about China and the EU, $28 trillion on their investments with J.P. Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs, and others, the 6 mega banks. So we're told we have to be humiliated by China. Obama is publicly bowing to Hu Jintao, a dictator thug by any yardstick, who runs the country, who's got the biggest kill of human skulls around their neck of any country ever. Conservatively 60 mil under Mao alone. I mean, they have sports stadium executions every week in every city. Every major city has 14 mobile execution vans for petty crimes. You are just executed and you are gutted on the way to the airport. It's iced and flown into Japan, where rich Europeans and Westerners and Chinese and Japanese get the goods. Falun Gong are their favorite fruit because they're peaceful, they're non-resistant, they are complete vegetarians and health nuts. And so they are kept blood-typed and kept in jail cells and fed well for when their organs are to be sold. This is all public. There's so many facets. How do I even begin here? Harry Reid, of course, is in a lot of trouble for calling Hu Jintao a dictator. He actually got a slip of the tongue, kind of like Dick Cheney 3 times, Rumsfeld 4 times, said a missile hit the Pentagon. Then they talked about many times the shoot down of Flight 93, which the state police saw, the F-16s and the missiles, and they have the AIM-9 recordings of NORAD. We even know what unit, the Happy Hooligans out of the Dakotas, now disbanded, assigned to Virginia for drills. A general said, I don't care if there's a stand down. That thing's going into the Capitol. AIM-9, take it out. 2 AIM-9s, take it out. We even know the name of the general. They even had an award ceremony for it. Of course, I had Colonel Don de Grand Prix, former Black Ops commander, on to tell you that, and he was dead 2 weeks later. But we interview a lot of people that die, the D.C. Madam and others. Anyways, we'll be right back with that information. I'm sorry, I'm digressing. We're going to get into China in a big way. You want the full, deep understanding and scope and exactly what's coming in the future if they have their way. We're going to break it all down straight ahead. Stay with us.
I just knew too much.
Does that make me crazy?
Does that make me crazy?
Does it make us crazy?
Does that make me crazy?
Because we accurately predict the future? Because we understand the geopolitical factors and leaders? Because we study their own battle plans that are public? This is a big world. They have to publicly coordinate their operations. They always have a cover story, but right behind it, they have their admitted goal. And for the New World Order, world government is only the beginning. Bless your soul. Do you really think you're in control? That's what I'd say to the New World Order crowd out there. All right, let me do it. Let me break down the China situation as calmly as I can. China, of course, was the ally of the United States in World War II. The United States was already promoting socialism towards communism in the United States. Deals were made with China. Chiang Kai-shek was given faulty armaments. The right wing in America said that it was all staged. Decades later, it was declassified. That Mao Zedong was put into power by our government. But in the name of fighting the red Chinese threat and the Russian threat, a police state apparatus was built, witch hunts were expanded, attacks on free speech, federal control from behind the scenes under the guise of national security of Hollywood. All of that got cemented into place. Now, it's not that our owners, the robber barons, are really communist. As Carroll Quigley, the Georgetown political science head, Bill Clinton's main mentor, wrote, he was given access to the globalist, what he called the British Roundtable Committee documents for several years, to write a 1,000-page tome for the planetary controllers so that they would have a couple thousand copies to give to high-level State Department, CIA, and others. He published it on a limited run, and it was a private publishing that was done, and it was only several thousand copies printed and given to high-level gophers in government so they could understand how things really work and operate. The plates, of course, were surreptitiously smuggled, and it was reprinted brazenly by patriots in the 1970s. And I loaned it to a newspaper reporter about 2 years ago, and he never gave it back. In fact, I want Aaron Dykes, if you have to, go over to that guy's house. I know he lives here in Austin. I want my 10 books or so we loaned him back. Side issue, let's just order another one online. I think they're like $50, though. It's a big hardcover. The one I have is actually an original. But original reprinting from the 70s. It's thousands of dollars for one of the original. I think it's $2,000. But see, that's the problem with history. I say I'm going to give you detail. I'm going to break this down. This is all facts. This is all massive knowledge proving everything I'm saying. So I don't want to just make statements here about what China's doing and where we're going in the future. The point is, Quigley said, we use communism, we use fascism, we use socialism, anything that collectivizes the general public to get control of them. And then we'll use a fascist leader, a dictator, a communist leader, socialism. We don't care. We want power centralized in very few hands, so we can move towards this global corporate state where there will be no freedom. And he went on to say, I believe humans want to live in tyranny. This is our natural state. This is a good thing. He also published publicly The Anglo-American Establishment and bragged about that, kind of a public book, but watered down a bit. And that's only, I think, 300 pages long. I read that when I was about 15 years old, but I haven't read it since. Like, that was the first book of Carroll Quigley I read. But the plan was always to build up China to menace Russia. While the United States was used to fund Russia and give it armaments and secrets, and Ford and GM and all of them, huge factories building army trucks, and U.S. engineers helping build the Russians' nuclear reactors, giving them the A-bombs and then killing the Rosenbergs as patsies. Because, again, if you look at this as Russians or Chinese or Americans, you're blind. This is the global banking cartel who funded both sides in World War I, who funded all the sides in World War II, who going back more than 300 years in Europe in those endless wars was constantly funding all the different armies, all the different sides. And they don't care. They always got paid. And governments would crack down on the public. The public would tend to roll over and let them take their land and let them tax them into poverty. If, after all, it was a war, if, after all, their firstborn son didn't come back from the front, you bet they were willing to starve to death and have their other younger kids with their ribs sticking out because Junior got killed fighting Napoleon, or vice versa. Meanwhile, Napoleon was publicly being funded by the Rothschilds and other major banking houses, and so were the Brits. There was the Rothschild family in France funding Napoleon on record, and when Napoleon took over the first time, they got more land than his new royal house he set up got. That's why almost all the good vineyards in France now are Rothschild. I mean, just like the big banks now of the 600-plus islands off Greece worth billions apiece, private bankers are getting their own individual islands. That's how Greece is paying them. And the bankers sold Greece the derivatives and made the profit, and now we're saying, oh, you can't pay this other stuff back. Here, give me your islands. I mean, this is carpetbagging on a scale that makes the mind spin. You know what carpetbagging was? The South was completely wasted, burned, destroyed by Sherman, and there's just starving people all over the place, and here comes people with money with their big carpet bags buying everything up for pennies on the dollar. That's what carpetbagging is. The globalists are wreckers. You go back to every culture, and at key straits around the world, they would build fires in foggy bad weather to confuse ships and think that they were lighthouses to bring them into port, to wreck them on shoals so that they could then, under laws that all those countries, England, France, Aboriginal systems had the same laws that, well, if a ship's wrecked, it's not stealing, it's fair game, whoever can salvage it. And if a ship runs into rocks, quarter mile out to sea, it's freezing cold, almost everybody's going to die. And then you go out when the fog clears and get all the goods out of the wrecked ship. That's what corporate raiding is. They go in, take control of a company. They're never going to pay the stockholders. They just sell everything off and then bankrupt it and keep the profit for themselves. That's what the New World Order is. And then you're homeless, so you can't stand up to them. They don't just not care if you become homeless or if you lose your job or you lose your farm or your self-sufficiency. They don't want you to have it. And a lot of folks are saying, where does China come into this? Oh, it's going to come into it. So it is on record that our government set China up from the beginning. And 100 years before that, China was divided into 12 parts, and the U.S. had its own sector. China's already been run by the West for hundreds and hundreds of years. How'd they do it? Drug trade. The Chinese made heroin illegal, opium illegal. And they just came right in, and they bought off all the police and the military and the population because the Chinese made it illegal. It made there be huge profits, and that's how British and U.S. intel, the Germans got their piece, the French got their piece. The French ran Vietnam because they had to get that opium out of there and out of Laos and out of Cambodia and sell it up to the Chinese.